Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome to another Modernize or Die CFML News Edition. It's August 11th, 2020, and I am Gavin Pickin, a software consultant for Ortus Solutions, and today I have Brad Wood with me.
So what would the start date be if we were like Captain's Log? Start date. Like what would that be for this episode? Does anybody know?
I don't know. Anyone in the chat? Anyone?
Any Star Trek fans? I've always wondered, are star dates like a real thing? Like, do people on the International Space Station actually have star dates, or is that just a movie magic thing that, Captain Picard did or whatever?
I'm not sure. I guess we'll have to look that up for next time.
All right, next episode, I want to hear you and Eric had the star date. None of this normal U.S. date nonsense.
Yeah, we confuse a lot of people, I know, with these U.S. dates.
Think of all the aliens in space watching our podcast that are like, August 11th, what's that?
Yep. Well, at least we get a few more viewers that way. But okay, well, first we just want to thank our sponsors, Ortus Solutions. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. So one way you can thank them is to sign up for a live training from the makers of your favorite box product. In August, this month, we have two different workshops going on. The first one is a one-day workshop from John Clausen on containerizing CFML apps, and the other one's a two-day workshop that you're leading. You want to tell us about that one real quick?
Yeah, it's our CommandBox Zero to Hero workshop. So basically everything you need to know about getting going with CommandBox, focusing a lot on server management, since that's kind of one of the biggest features that people use for that. And one of the cool things about my workshop is we're going to give away a license to the CommandBox Service Manager, which is like a $49 value or something, to all of the attendees. So that allows you to run your CommandBox servers as services on Mac, Linux, or Windows, one of our paid modules. So little sweetening of the pot there for the attendees of the Zero to Hero CommandBox workshop.
Very cool. And then, of course, we have CFCast, which is releasing free and new paid content every week. So thank you. If you guys want to support Ortus Solutions, those are ways you can do that. Also, thanks to the Patreon supporters. I think we have like 29 supporters now, so we're about 58% of the mark for fully funding our Modernize or Die podcast. So if you want to help us, patreon.com/Ortus Solutions, you can, basically sign up for a plan, and all the money there goes towards the podcast and our other open source products. So thank you to all the Patreon supporters we have. And at the end, we'll give you a list of them so you can thank them yourselves.
Send flowers and cards, please.
Yep. Okay, so let's get into the news and events. And the first thing this week is that ColdBox 6 was cooked last week, and Luis said he was releasing it, but he is out of the office kind of a little bit last week, so he didn't actually finally release it. So everyone was asking, is it released? Is it released? I'm like, So I don't think, he fooled us. It's not quite released yet. It should be any day. I think he's back in the office this week, so hopefully we'll be getting that out, getting it cut, and we'll let you know for sure. So sorry about that, everybody.
If you say your goose is cooked, that's a bad thing. So why is it a good thing that ColdBox is cooked, or is it a bad thing?
Well, it's fully cooked. I mean, if you're the goose, then being cooked is bad, if you're the frog, getting cooked is bad. But if you're waiting for dinner, having the food cooked is good. So
if you say so.
Well, I guess it depends. If you want sushi, maybe you'll go raw. But
I do like sushi.
You like whole food, Brad. Honestly.
You're right. I'll eat anything. My bar is low and my stomach is hungry. So.
Yep. So we already mentioned that the CommandBox Service Manager module will be given to our CommandBox Zero to Hero workshop attendees. That was definitely a highlight of the week. So if you guys want to find out a little more, we'll talk about that in the conference section. We also have a release for Preside. So they released 10.12. So it's a modest one, they said, is they're moving towards regular releases. But they said they have 33 completed tickets and 25 enhancements and new features. So it's nice to see them moving along and still doing well. Another framework out there. And Preside is built on top of ColdBox and CommandBox, and it's running a modified version of Lucy, right? So they're doing some pretty cool stuff. They're not just cookie cutter stuff. So
Well, yeah, that's one of the reasons I like Preside is because they definitely exploit the power of ColdBox and CacheBox and LogBox and modules and all the goodness that ColdBox gives them. So the Preside guys are also just fun guys to be around.
Yeah, they're definitely pushing the boundaries. They're doing some cool stuff. So, yeah, definitely check that out if you're looking for a CMS. It's a full featured system. A lot of great stuff in there. Okay. We just want to tease you about the next Ortus webinar because we have another one coming up here in August. Grant Copley did the Wirebox one last month, which is already available on CFcast, but we're going to be announcing the August webinar coming at the end of the month very soon. So just want to remind you, keep up, and we'll have that information very soon for you. Okay, I just want to remind you that we had a great CF online meetup last week hosted by Charlie Arehart, and he had Brian Klaas on there with him. So he did the I didn't know S3 could do that. And so there's that's a really good session. He's provided the links to the slides as well as the video, and that's all available in the show notes here. So Brian always gives a great presentation. His AWS stuff is really, really powerful, and he goes over a lot of the great stuff. So definitely check that out. You might use S3 right now, but I bet you don't know half of the things it can do. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. Brian's sessions always work well to expose all of the functionality you probably didn't even realize was built into S3, which is pretty cool.
Yep, I like the life cycles and the different tiers. More ways to save money is always good. So,
yeah.
And then next week, the Online CF Meetup actually has 2 sessions. I actually double took when I was making the show notes here, but there's 2 of them. So at 11 a.m. Central, we have Charlie Arehart doing a migrating or comparing CF admin settings. So we wanted to basically look at different ways to compare CF settings between one instance or another. And so I'm hoping he's using CF config, or at least using it somewhere in there. But the other session is going to be one by Simon MacDonald, PWAs, how do we get here? And so
how do we get here, or how do we get there?
How do we get here? Well, yeah.
How did we get here? Sorry, I was thinking it was how do we get here. I'm like, what do you mean? You're here already?
No, so basically looking at how it's evolved HTML and CSS and JavaScript over 25 years, and basically how now they're sort of progressive web apps, and what does it mean to be one, and everything. So that looks like a good session, and that one is August 13th as well. But that one is at 5 p.m. So just a couple of days away. You're going to have 2 great online meetups. So definitely check those out. CFcast, all the content last week was actually released on the Tuesday. So we're actually got ahead of schedule. So last week we actually announced way more than we should have. So you already found out about that. But just a recap, there was some new videos on Quick 4, QB8. There was a couple more classes added to the ColdBox Masterclass, as well as the Ortus webinar for injecting dependencies with Wirebox from Grant. So yeah, a lot of great content. I've been working on my little screencast series as well. So my VS Code one, I'm fleshing it out. I've already got like 3 pages of an outline, so it's going to be a nice long series.
Nice.
So get that recorded soon, and maybe you guys will be able to check that out very soon. Okay, so next on our list we have conferences. So as we mentioned, Into the Box 2020 workshops, we've got 2 more scheduled in August. So you want to tell us a little bit more about your 2-day workshop for the CommandBox, Brad? What do you think you're going to cover?
You should come, and you should come. There will be puppies, rainbows, double rainbows most likely, and unicorns.
So what do you think you're going to cover in there? Obviously you're going to look at
I just told you unicorns, man.
Okay.
No,
well.
So our hope is to eventually have a hero to superhero for CommandBox, like we did with ColdBox. So again, this is the 0 to hero, so it's kind of the introduction to CommandBox. You don't really need to have any previous knowledge. We're going to talk about the basic CLI usage, the kind of commands and things you can do from CommandBox, how to use the command help, how to extend the CLI itself with things like modules. And then we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about servers. So deployment is kind of a big chunk of what developers spend their time with these days. So we're going to cover doing local development environments with CommandBox, how CommandBox plugs into Docker, though I'm not going to go too deep into Docker since John Klaassen's session is kind of like deep dive in Docker. And then how you can use CommandBox for deploying your servers. So that means the server.json, the box.json, the cfconfig.json, all those configuration files are all going to be kind of what we cover. So if you take this workshop, by the time you're done, you'll kind of have a really good base of where to begin to run your code locally in CommandBox if you're, just using like a shared dev server right now, and what it would look like to actually deploy your code on CommandBox for staging or production, either in a VM or in Docker and some other environment. So that's kind of our goal, is you come out having a solid understanding of how all the basics work, especially with servers.
Very cool. Yeah,
and unicorns.
And unicorns. I expect some ASCII unicorns showing up in that presentation.
Oh, yeah. I've written a cat ASCII command in previous versions of this workshop. It was just a command that output an ASCII picture of a cat. So maybe it's time for the ASCII unicorn.
I think you have to now. So we also... And we always get good attendance. That's probably the most popular one these days, especially with all the Docker love out there. And so that's going to be a one-day workshop from John. And the prices are different. So if you're doing the 2-day workshop for you, it's $8.99, and then $4.99 for the one-day workshop. And we obviously have the podcast code. So if you use podcast 10 as your code, you'll save 10%. So definitely want to check that out. And there was a blog post as well. That's the one I was sharing on the local screen. And so we'll share that in the blog section for a little bit more information about it. And you can go sign up at ortusolutions.com/events to find out more about that. Okay. We also have the jconf.dev, that conference we mentioned, the Java conference. And if you sign up in the next few days, you can get an awesome swag box of goodies. I signed up, so I'll at least be able to report and tell you what goodies they are sending out. But the conference itself is September 30th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Central. It's free, and there's Venkat's going to be there and a lot of other great Java presenters. So definitely check that out. It's on my list, so we'll be doing that.
Love Venkat.
Yep. Yeah, I went through, I think, before I did the streams presentation into the box, I watched probably 10 hours of Venkat. So
someone asked for a link to that conference.
I will be posting it right now.
Perfect.
Yep, go sign up, get some goodies. Cool. And then we also have the Adobe ColdFusion Certification. So since there's no in-person conference, you can do that online. And the good thing is you can start, it looks like any time. So there's a blog post out now, but there's also a link to register. So I'm going to share that in the show notes as well. And then, yeah, you can do all of that online, including the test now, which used to be in person for the test. So glad to see they're moving forward with that. And hopefully we get a few more people out there and certified. And I wonder if they're going to have a list of certified people so you can search for developers and verify certification. Be kind of neat.
I don't know. Did they do that before?
I'm not sure, but it'd be nice to have some way to verify that you're actually certified other than the certificate. As cool as it is. I know there's a few people with photos on the website, Calvin Stanton, for sure.
Hey, be proud of it, man.
Yep. Okay, well, Adobe ColdFusion CF Summit West, as we mentioned before, is not going to be in person anymore. It's going to be online. And they announced the dates, November 17th through the 19th, and it's all going to be online and free. So if you go to cfsummit.adobeevents.com, you can find out a little more information about that. The most important thing right now, though, is the speaker sign-up is ending on August 15th. So this week, Brad.
Yeah, I need to get some stuff in for that.
Yes, I do too. So yeah, don't want to leave it any longer. Procrastination is done. It's time to deliver. So we got to get those presentations.
Panic monster. Put it in.
And we always recommend, if you haven't spoken before, an online conference is a great way to do it. So get started. And this one is a good example too. So you don't have to worry about stage fright or anything when you're just talking to your computer. So
you're talking to your computer. That's all I'm doing right now, Gavin. I'm just talking to my computer.
Yep, that's what we do most days. Cool. Well, CF Camp, again, we don't have any more information yet. With no in-person, hopefully they'll do some type of online thing. It'd be nice to at least get the get the group together for some presentations and some socializing. Because, of course, this was the year I was really planning to go. I've been planning for years to go, and I'm finally like, let's do it. And then COVID.
Wah, wah.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
kind
not
of
meant to be. Same with Scotch on the Rocks. I was planning to go there, and then they shut it down. Never to do it again.
They heard you were coming. They were like, "Oh no!"
Yeah, us Kiwis aren't allowed in Europe, obviously. So, okay, well, let's get on to the blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. We got a fair number of them this week, and some new ones too. So, first up, we got Will DeBruin, who's got some good content. He's been doing a lot of blog posts lately, and really enjoying them. And so this one, he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Gavin. Gavin, I'm seeing in the chat that your voice doesn't come through when you're sharing your screen. Might want to check your OBS settings real quick.
You're right. I got a new microphone and I messed it all up. So hold on, let me try and add it here.
Or we can just have Gavin share his screen and I'll just like narrate what he's doing. Like we're scrolling, we got some more text.
There, that better? Sorry guys, new microphone, messed it all up. So what I was trying to say is that Will DeBruin presented Into the Box on CB Validation. And he did a great session. It was really, really good. And he's been helping some people lately in the chat and everything. And one of the things they were looking at was doing something with a UDF validator, but realized that it wasn't powerful enough. So the custom validators can do a few things that UDFs can't. And so this blog post sort of talks about it and figures out, well, when would you want to use a UDF versus a custom validator? And so pretty nice. He's got some examples and some targets. And these are really, really cool. We've done quite a few of them recently, and I've built a few with myself, and I really like them. So, yeah.
It's not powerful enough.
Yeah,
not powerful enough.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, though. You can do some really good things with them, and they're not that complicated. It's just a CFC with a couple of functions, and, they just take certain validation arguments and go from there. So, highly recommend this blog post. If you're using CB validation, or if you aren't yet, I definitely recommend checking it out. Save yourself all that cookie cutter code time. So definitely should check that out.
Yeah, Vil has some really good stuff. He's dug deep into CB validation and CP security and several of the stuff. He helps contribute to the docs, and he really understands it. So we really appreciate the blog post he's put out there. Thanks, Vil.
So, and somebody else that puts out a lot of good content is Ben Adele. And so this one here, he had an interesting thought process or thought experiment where he was looking at mapping arrays to structs and structs to arrays using mapping functions. And so he talks about if you're having an array and you're going to end up with an array, you use map, right? And then if you're not, he was talking about different ways to do that. And so he sort of built his own little system to do that. So he created this little function, array to struct, and then basically passes in a different function to map to. And so it worked through this process. And in the comments I saw, you talked about, well, why don't you just use reduce? And he was like, well, reduce is always kind of a weird thing, and I kind of agree to him, to be honest. But
it's not weird.
It's a little different. Yeah. So again, map and reduce, they're all functions to sort of, help you do the code you write over and over again. But he sort of walked through this and, a different approach, and it was kind of interesting.
He basically rebuilt reduce over again.
Yeah, basically, but a little more user friendly. And then in the comments, as I mentioned, you had this reduce option here, and then you cleaned it up, and then Ben also said, well, that's where I just use a for loop, and that's usually what I end up doing.
Well, I mean, he did write a for loop. He just wrote it inside of a wrapper that behaved like reduce. I mean, because all the map each reduce functions. I mean, what do you think behind the scenes in the Java implementation they have? They have some basic iteration. The point is it's abstracted away from you. So it's kind of the same thing at the end of the day. You either use CFML's built-in abstracted away from you for loop, which is reduce, or you write your own, which is what his blog post basically was.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, the reduce is just kind of funny that you put your data in at the end of the calls. That's the only thing that
Your
throws me.
data. Oh, you're talking about the default value.
Yeah, default value,
I mean,
basically.
you have to put it somewhere. I
I
mean, and
know.
so like I mentioned in the comments, the reduce function takes two arguments. You have the closure, and then you have the default value of your accumulator, which really can be anything. Reduce can return a struct, an array, a string, a number, null, whatever you want. I had mentioned to him you can also initialize the default value of your accumulator in the closure itself. So, just parameter equals default value, which I'll do sometimes. The trick with that is if the collection you're reducing is empty, the closure never runs and you get null back because it never gets initialized. Likewise, you can also not initialize it at all, and you can just have an is null check inside of your closure to see if anything is passed in. But that has the same problem. If the collection's empty, that code will never run and you'll get null back, which may work for your purposes. But sometimes I'll do that if I know I'm reducing a collection that has, some number of items in it. I'll just do right there in my closure declaration, I like to call it ACC for accumulator because I'm lazy, equals, my default value. But I do think that's more readable than having it at the end of the closure sometimes. And I'm pretty certain that in Lucy and or Adobe, I need to test it. There were some syntax parsing errors if you put an initialization value for your accumulator and you tried to use an arrow function with no body, with no curly braces around it. I think it actually threw a syntax parsing error if you didn't have the curlies around the body. I'd have to check and see which engines that was, though. But anyway,
Interesting.
yeah, fun stuff. It was a fun post to binge just to look at all the different ways we can do things. Because at the end of the day, like we talked about in the comments, all the functional programming constructs can be done with just loops. I mean, it's just another way of doing things. It's kind of the trade-off is what do you Scott's cracking me up. He's going to say you got to get those curlies, fries in parentheses. It's just different ways of doing things. The functional approach, lets you encapsulate your variables. It lets you not write the looping mechanics. So it's all about trade-offs and readability. So I love these discussions.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely like them too. Like I said, I mean, and that's the more we look at them, more we get familiar, the more comfortable we are, and we're more likely to use those types of things. And they definitely save you time. I mean, there's definitely some boilerplate otherwise. So, okay, next up on the list, we have a blog post that ColdFusion needs to die. So this one definitely caught my attention.
Yeah, I just read that a little bit earlier this morning.
Yep. So David Briers on the ColdFusion.adobe.com site, and the summary is, it's time for a bold action in order to make ColdFusion grow, and it starts by killing the reputation that ColdFusion is anchored with. And I thought a couple of years ago we should totally rename it to like some zombie reference or something, because it's back from the dead and whatnot. No one will know, and if we don't call it ColdFusion, no one can call it anything bad. And everyone ignored me, but now David's having his turn. So,
it made me think of of Microsoft, rebranding Internet Explorer as Microsoft Edge. Now, I'm sure to some degree they also did some rewriting in the process, but it's almost like they wanted to sort of shed the name recognition of Internet Explorer and have, a new branding. Clickbait. So the post was interesting. It was sort of two-prong, and I was hoping it would focus more on the first prong. The first prong was what the tagline hinted more at, which is we need to change the perception, which in my opinion starts with us. It starts with the ColdFusion developers. It starts with the apps we build. It starts with the libraries we use. It starts with the frameworks we adopt, right? It starts with, the way we talk about ourselves in the programming space. And then the second prong of the article was, change the name, which is really more of a pure marketing shtick, right? To be able to talk about ColdFusion but not use the word ColdFusion. So now we call it Hot Fusion or something, right? I wouldn't be completely opposed to just a name change, but I think that's a smaller part than the first prong, just in my opinion, which is the way our community behaves. We need to, in my opinion, see widespread adoption of frameworks like ColdBox. We need to see widespread adoption of testing like TestBox. We need to see widespread adoption of Docker and modern deployment and, getting rid of spaghetti code. Because I think that's what gave ColdFusion the bad name in the first place. You can change the name, but if the code still sucks, it's still, sucky piles of legacy code, but with a new name. So, I mean, I don't know if Adobe just renamed it Hotbox tomorrow or Hot Fusion tomorrow instead of ColdFusion, I don't know how much effect that would have other than us just being able to talk about it without the name. But it's still an interesting idea. I mean, it also made me think of Lucy trying to do Lucy Lang, which wasn't mentioned in the article, but this was on the Adobe portal, so it's understandable. In fact, there's some people that are surprised Adobe's moderators even like approved the article, though it wasn't overall negative or anything. But I mean, Lucy tried to do the same thing with Lucy Lang, which was a language that's not CFML but like CFML. But it didn't go anywhere for a couple reasons. The first of all was resources. Lucy's like poor, and has a shoestring budget and just a couple developers that do all the work that Lucy gets done. So the the specter of building an entirely new language from the ground up that was compatible with nothing was a super big problem. And part of that was that Lucy Lang was going to be just enough incompatible that it wouldn't run. It wouldn't, you couldn't take an existing ColdFusion app and just drop it on Lucy Lang and have it run because it was going to work a little differently. And so there's always that, like, rebranding is one thing, you just name it from ColdFusion to HotFusion. But if we were like, let's also reinvent it in such a manner that it's not backwards compatible, and everybody with their legacy investments in ColdFusion have no, easy migration path over to HotFusion, then that, in my opinion, that's a super big problem. Which is why I think we see more success with having sort of a backwards compatible version of growing ColdFusion, even though it means we get stuck with the warts, that we don't like. It's a very, very interesting sort of ideas. How much can you change the language without nobody using it because it's not compatible, and how much do you need to change it because how much is up here in people's head just when they hear the word. And I think maybe it's probably somewhere in the middle, but it's hard to say. I don't know if Adobe would ever seriously consider rebranding it. I don't know if Adobe cares.
Yeah, I was gonna say they've probably got too much
about the marketing,
too much money tied up in the brand of it, and I mean, every government and everything that actually does use it and probably appreciate it, they'd freak out if it disappeared or whatever. I mean, everyone already freaks out now because they think.
I think there's an element that would be scared of it, because what's one of the things that giant government contracts like about Adobe ColdFusion? It's stable, right? Now I say that, I mean, I just saw a tweet today that Adobe no longer, runs like PhoneGap or, one of their products. Adobe does cut products, but generally speaking, Adobe, giant Fortune, whatever 100 company, stability, lots of legal teams, they do their thing, 10-year roadmap. Big, government stuff likes that. You talk to a government contract, yeah, we want to use some new fly-by-night technology. We're like, yeah, no, we're not interested. We want to use some technology that's been around for 20 years and it's owned by a Fortune 500 company. Okay, that sounds great. So, to an extent, I think there's some of Adobe's base that would freak out a bit if they change the name all of a sudden and we're like, whoa, what's going on? We've never heard of this. So, I don't know, it's kind of a double-edged sword because there's two different minds here. There's the mind of the general purpose programming community, which frankly doesn't care about Fortune 500 companies and support. They care about the image of legacy ColdFusion. And then there's the primary customer base. I say primary, I don't know what the percentages are, of ColdFusion that are large corporate government entities that want stability, in the language and the platform. Anyway.
Yeah, I just say if we rename all the file extensions to .zom.zombie, at least it'll look cool for anyone who looks at it.
You can do that, right? I
used to do that.
ColdFusion will process any file extension so long as the servlet filter mapping, whatever, matches it, and as long as your web server, IIS, Apache, whoever, knows to send those files to the servlet, it's possible. Might not be smart, but it's possible.
Yeah, I guess if you put everything inside of Docker anyway, it's not like people see files anymore. So, but I thought .zombie would be just super cool because it's like the hip cool thing and no one will know, and anyways. And like you say, when you open it up, most people don't even know it's ColdFusion because it looks like JavaScript. So,
all right, Scott Steinbeck's like, what? What about PhoneGap? All right, it's PhoneGap build specifically.
Yeah, I know he used to use that. I'm not sure if he still does, but yeah.
All right, yeah. So in the chat for our live viewers, there's the tweet that Ray Camden sent out. He said, pour one out for PhoneGap build, and it was a link to an Adobe forum where someone is saying that PhoneGap build is no longer maintained by Adobe. But I think PhoneGap build was a specific service that was like a cloud-based build service for PhoneGap stuff. Yeah,
it was built on top of the Cordova stuff because basically PhoneGap was like the Adobe commercial version of Cordova.
Isn't that what the CF client stuff used? With the little ColdFusion builder thing? So does that mean you can't use CF client anymore?
Well,
with
I don't know,
ColdFusion.
because Adobe isn't running it, but doesn't mean that they're not using it. So, but yeah, interesting.
Anyway, interesting stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, so the back to our original blog post. I mean, it's an interesting post. Definitely, should make some of your gears turn. Like I said, I think there's more value to be had in a vibrant ColdFusion community that looks and talks modern and codes modern than just in the name. Maybe it's like 70-30. I think it's maybe some of both, but I don't know. I mean, I look at other tiny communities like us, communities like Clojure, or just newer languages that maybe have about as many users as us, but they're like super active communities. Their Slack teams have like 6,000 people, and they have 10 times as many open source projects. And you look at the conversations they have, and they're deeply technical conversations about how the language is architected. I don't see those sorts of things in ColdFusion, and I think that hurts the image more, in my opinion, than just the name and the legacy feeling that's tied to it. But
Yeah, I definitely think it's not, one thing will not solve it. Like you said, it's a group thing, and we need to work together. But that's part of the reason why we built this podcast, right? Is to try and get people up to date and make sure people know what's going on in the community and different projects and updates and everything. So hopefully,
hey, get up to date. Uncle Sam wants you. Uncle Adobe wants you. Adobe needs a mascot. You know how Java, what was the guy's name? Duke had the little Duke mascot. Adobe needs a mascot. They've never had one. The last Dev Nexus, they had a guy come out in a freaking like blow up Duke costume for the 25 years of Java or whatever it was. So that's what Adobe's missing. ColdFusion needs the cute. What's the Golang? It has the little looks like a 6-year-old drew it like hamster.
So we need to get Bolt
whatever
back? Lightning Bolt guy.
Well, that was just a hand, but if we could get the rest of the body that hand was connected to.
Yep.
Ben Nadell might be the guy for this, 'cause Ben used to do like weird Photoshop mashups of like, oh my gosh, I just forgot his name. The original Adobe ColdFusion evangelist. Ben
Forda.
Forda, thank you. Like he would do like mashups of like Ben Forda and centaurs or scorpions. We need Ben Nadell's Photoshop skills here to come up with a cute animal-based, logo for ColdFusion. That's what we need, folks.
Okay, let's get that done, and then we'll see how that works. Okay, next up we have a post from Steve Nealon, and this is actually a second post. Last week he actually posted another one about some SQL Server code, and so he's basically looking at getting recent entries in each group of records. And basically wanted to sort of go a little further and say, okay, if there's certain ones like that are repeated, they want to get the most recent entry. So just some basic SQL, but sometimes people, not sure the best way to approach it. But so what this will do is actually go through and delete basically duplicates. And so just a little bit of a little helper there if you're looking at some SQL. And so he's got a couple of blog posts recently about getting items and getting the group items together and stuff like that. So nice little short blog post, but useful if you're wanting to mess with some groups in your SQL. So okay, next up on the list we have something from Fusion Reactor. This one I thought was pretty interesting too, because the cloud live mode is just like traditional on-premise Fusion Reactor. So I was like, ooh. Yeah, so
you had me at traditional on-premise Fusion Reactor.
Yeah, so Fusion Reactor Cloud, the SaaS solution, has a lot of functionality that the traditional version has, but its perception as being, not real time is sort of what's really struggled with. But apparently they've done a lot of work, and now they're added stuff like live graphs and everything, and done some upgrades on that. So
can you click on any of those images? Are those actual cloud images that you have there on the screen?
Looks like it.
Because it looks a lot different than the older cloud UI. Nice. So a little bit of backstory. The original product owners or project managers, whatever the right phrase is, of the on-premise Fusion Reactor product and the Fusion Reactor Cloud were different people, and they kind of worked in their own separate vacuum, connecting to the same backend agent, getting the same basic data, but the UI and the user experience was fairly different between the two. And that was a friction point, because I mean, we use cloud, we have clients that use cloud, but the cloud interface doesn't always seem to have the same data in the same manner that's as easy to get to. And when you're dealing with something like Docker Swarm, that's a problem, because you can't target container number 17. You're kind of stuck with just the cloud aggregate data, which doesn't have all the same data. It can be a little bit behind as far as the caching they put in place. And so when I was talking with the Fusion Reactor guys at the last Dev Nexus that wasn't canceled because the world wasn't dying of COVID, the Fusion Reactor guys were telling me they were kind of consolidating those two projects, and they had the same project manager now over both of them. And one of the biggest things they were looking at was parity between on-premise and cloud, so the user experiences would kind of merge and be more familiar to people, which I think is a great idea, because that was kind of one of the pain points for that. So it looks like this is kind of that actually being realized, which is very exciting, because I love the cloud as far as how it's just, this SaaS up in the ether, collecting all the data from your containers, merging it together. But the user experience was always a little bit different. The graphs didn't function in quite the same way. So I love seeing that being brought more in alignment with the on-premise Fusion Reactor, which of course is what I've been used to using for years. And so,
and some of our clients too.
Yeah, exactly. Know my way around it. So I'm excited to play with some of the new cloud interfaces for sure. And geez, I should probably mention this. Sorry, I was just thinking, I'm surprised there hasn't been a tweet about this. From my understanding, Fusion Reactor actually, a couple weeks ago, adjusted their cloud pricing, I believe. I don't know if they've officially announced it. I was working with the Fusion Reactor guys doing some contract renewables. Let's see, I'm just looking at their website right now. Yeah, on-premise cloud. Yeah. So the cloud pricing has been cut basically in half. So you pay by the hour on a per monthly basis, and so it's really easy to set up. You go and you put in your credit card, and then they. Oh, I see. So Charlie says it's been a quiet rollout. Hopefully, I'm not spoiling anything right here. But yeah, like Charlie said, the prices are right here on the website. So the on-premise used to be like $79 a month, and the cloud was like $149 or something in that neighborhood. So it was about twice the price. And then one license is good for like 4 containers. There's all the details in there. But what they did is they basically slashed the cloud pricing in half. And then the sort of upcharge you get for the flex instances, the on-demand instances, because you can have reserve instances. I'm going to have a minimum of 5 containers online at all times, right? You pay like a cheaper price for that. And then if you bounce out past that and you turn on 10 containers for a week, you pay a slightly higher rate. That went from like a 10% uptick to like a 20%, but overall it's still actually a lot cheaper. So this is a great news for anybody that's been looking at cloud or looked at it in the past and was maybe pushed away from it because the pricing for the cloud was a bit higher. Actually, it was quite a bit higher. It was about twice as high as the on-premise. They've really brought the pricing kind of in parity now too, which I think is really great, because this actually makes it work a lot better for people who want to be able to have the cloud functionality, because it's a lot cheaper now. And it's just basics on how many containers you have. It's I forget the numbers. It's a few cents per hour basically. But the prices on their website reflect the current cloud pricing, and this all changed like 2 weeks ago. So it's really good news for cloud people. And if you were already a Fusion Reactor Cloud customer, you're just automatically getting the new pricing if you're doing the monthly billing with your credit card, already put in there.
Yeah, and the best thing is that basically if you're paying for Ultimate on-premise, you get the cloud for free. That's basically what it is now.
More or less, yeah, because the cloud used to really be like a separate offering, and now it's really just kind of one offering. You have the on-premise price, and then, hey, you had this, cloud stuff as well. So, if you're doing any kind of scalable, deployments, whether it's, Docker Swarm, Kubernetes, any of the AWS stuff, anything where the number of servers you have changes, and you want to be able to have consolidated graphing across all of them with no statistics gathering, the cloud is really where it's at. And I love the new pricing they had, because it really, if you've looked at it in the past, look at it again, because the prices are probably a lot different than they were the last time you looked at them. I'm a fan of it, and luckily it came just in time for one of our clients I was helping renegotiate how they wanted to do our licensing. So they're all set up, and it just they get billed per month based on how many containers they have online. If they don't want to, if they disable Fusion Reactor on their containers, they don't pay for it. So it's really a pure as you need pricing model.
Yes, they say one license seat per host, and that gives you up to 4 containers or 4 instances on a single host. So that's pretty good.
And as Charlie just pointed out, you don't have to be doing a strict cloud deployment. I know that's like where super comes in handy, but if you just have like 3 on-premise deployments of ColdFusion, you can still benefit from the cloud stuff. If your server goes down and it's offline, you can't get to the on-premise Fusion Reactor page to even look at your metrics. But guess what? It's all still there on the cloud thing for you to look at. So obviously there are benefits to the cloud, even if you just have a set number of on-premise servers. So that is a very valid point, Charlie.
Yep, I definitely need to check that out for a couple of clients. The pricing differences will be a big standing point for them. So
yeah, absolutely. If you have a standard license, I think it kind of just makes sense, to be honest, in my opinion, to move over to the cloud, especially since if they want to turn it off for a week, they don't pay for anything for that week.
Yeah.
Which, for some people, with the coronavirus hurting their business and money being tight, that gives them more control to be able to choose how much they want to use it until business comes back again and they can afford to leave it on all the time.
Yep. Okay. Enough sales for Fusion Reactor.
Yeah. This
we love
concludes our Fusion Reactor sales portion. We just love Fusion Reactor. Dang it.
Yeah, we do. I need to install it for another client. They're having issues with something. Like, you can't do much really without Fusion Reactor. Let's get that and we'll fix it.
Like, why is this page slow? Well, what does Fusion Reactor say? Oh, I don't have that. Well, when can you have it? Call me back when you have it.
Okay. Next up, we have another one from Ben Adele. So this one's interesting. Is numeric and format number can work for very large numbers in Lucy?
Yeah, I saw a tweet for this.
He said before he used to be concerned about the signed integer in ColdFusion, and how basically if you were using those, sometimes the larger numbers, it would do some crazy stuff. And so he wanted to put together a little demo as usual. So basically what he does is just keeps adding a 0 onto the end of the number, and basically checking to see is it numeric and trying to format it and see what happens. And so he rolled through, and you see the numbers getting higher and higher.
Oh, nice.
And so it does work with some pretty high numbers. You'll notice right here, though, that it didn't go to 100. It went to 99,999,999,000, which was interesting. And so you'll see that some inconsistencies.
The number starts to change. Got some internal rounding or something.
Yeah, so basically instead of being, one more, or actually it would be like about, a trillion more, it messes it up. But the funny thing is, down this one here, you see that all the way across, all zeros except for there's a 1 in the middle. So I don't know how that one works. The rest of them you can understand it's like a rounding to a certain degree. But there was no errors thrown, at least. But
scroll up. How's he outputting these? Is he putting them through number format?
Yeah, so he has his numeric value, so just is true or false, and then number format values.
Number format.
Just number format.
Okay, I was just curious if number format did any kind of rounding. It's tricky sometimes to debug some of these kind of floating point math type of things, because a lot of times ColdFusion will inherently do rounding and such just when you output it. So you have to be careful about how you output it. Sometimes you can tap into one of the underlying methods on the Java lang double or whatever the actual data type is, or call toString on it to get like just the raw representation. Java lang integer, it looks like.
Well, he's saying usually for that you basically get to like 2 billion, and then that's like the max, 2.147 billion. That's the max for the Java lang integer class. But with the ColdFusion, it keeps going way beyond that before it starts even doing weird things. So so it's interesting, like I said. Hopefully we don't have to use that, but he had to look it up. It's 6 is what it was. That's when you get to jankiness.
6,000,000?
A 6,000,000,000.
Gotta love that. So if you're ever dealing with a variable and you want to know what it is, so I just tried this in the CommandBox REPL. I typed t = 5, and then so if you do t or whatever your variable name .get class, which is a function, .get name, which is a function, that'll show you in my instance java.lang.double. So if you're ever curious what the data type is you're dealing with, and this will work with pretty much any ColdFusion variable because they're all a Java class in the day, just do .getClass, .getName with parentheses because they're function calls.
So
and that'll tell you the underlying Java.
So what we should do is we should get this little bit of code and then throw in an extra echo, which is the type, and then we can see if the type changes as it evolves.
See, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Do you get a different type back? And sometimes I'll do that to then go look at the Java docs for that class and find like a two-string equivalent method or something, just so I can get like the raw implementation directly out of it from Java without letting ColdFusion output it and possibly do some funny nonsense. Because a lot of the floating point operations people run into, they'll have a number that appears to be off by 1, but when you actually like kind of dump out the raw value of the Java Lang double or whatever it is, you'll see the full like .9999999 kind of stuff that got rounded up without you realizing it, which is kind of like the Heisenberg principle. The behavior of some of these variables can change as you view them, just based on how
you view them. Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, he also has another one here. So Benedel being busy again. So this next one is performing an in-place natural sort on an alphanumeric array in Lucy. So did you have a chance to check this one out, Brad?
I saw the headline for that and I clicked on it and scrolled through it, but I haven't actually read this post. It made sense we was talking about based on this little example.
Yeah, so basically, he describes what a natural sort is, where the technique where the numbers embedded within a string are treated atomically. Sorry. Yeah, so basically sorting through them.
The difference is, if you look at like the array sort function, you have the different sort types. You have like text or numeric, and that's because 1 should sort before 1, 0, or 11, or however it works. So if you try to sort numbers as just raw text, you'll get them out of order. And so the problem is he has numbers here embedded inside of text. So how do you sort the overall thing, but really just looking at the numbers? So it's something that would be a very common need for like a user interface where you want to sort a string, but you just want to sort based on kind of a substring inside of it, which you want to treat as a number.
Yeah, because obviously 100 should not be before 5, but if normal text, that would be the case.
Exactly. Yeah. His example shows that perfectly well right there.
Very cool. Yep. And so this is how the native sort, but with a natural sort, it comes out the way you expect it would. Interesting.
I'm curious if that's something you could wrap up as like a reusable UDF or not. Because the problem is, based on your use case, the number could be, at a different place in the string. And I think he's basically breaking the strings apart on spaces, and grabbing the part he wants to actually sort on. So probably be difficult to reuse that logic since it might be a little specific to your use case.
Yep. But again, always interesting. Very interesting. It makes me think too much for Tuesday. But
very interesting.
So as we mentioned earlier, Preside release notes for 10.12.0. So if you want to walk through here, this is the pretty big list for their modest release here. But it's pretty
Preside.
Good. So nice to see that.
Preside. It was abides. Never mind.
Sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button.
Oop, podcast is done.
Nope. Fooled you. We also had a blog post from Gregory Alexander. For a while, he was updating the Galaxy blog.
We haven't seen the Galaxy blog in a while.
Yep. And so this blog post here basically says that it's been a while since he posted. He's been busy at work working on clients, and he has been working on the Galaxy blog. He's actually used it for several clients now, and they've been working on updating the independent blog page. And he's also been working on getting the ColdFusion ORM in there and completely overhauling the original blog CFC interface. So hopefully we'll have some updates for you on that coming soon. So it's not dead. Don't worry about it. He's just been busy like a lot of us.
Not dead yet.
Yep. And then, of course, the last blog post of for this week is our blog post about our 2 workshops. So we looked at this briefly before, but if you want to find a little more information about what's in the workshop, you can. And as I mentioned on the website, if you go to events overview, you can see our upcoming trainings here. So there's John's on the 20th, Containerizing CFML Apps, and then CommandBox Zero to Hero by Bradley Wood. And then we have a couple others that were bookmarked, but I think these are probably going to have to disappear or change because things have changed. So,
yeah, I'm guessing Singapore is probably not going to happen.
Yep.
I mean, that is not an official announcement. That's just me commentating. But
yep.
Seeing how the world is still battling with the COVID stuff, I would be afraid to go traveling around the world, unfortunately.
Yep, everyone's all proud of how New Zealand is dealt with COVID and everything, but I found out that they got like 6 new cases yesterday out of the blue. They've got cases again. So for all my friends in New Zealand, they'll walk around with no masks. Everyone's back at school. Everyone's back to normal. But,
oh, really?
Yeah, they have been. They find it hilarious that we all have masks and doing all this crazy stuff. But now they've got a few cases just pop up. So I don't know how or why, but I just found that out today.
We're going to be a little while. I mean, I just flew to Montana last week. It was a vacation. We had booked the flights already before the COVID stuff. We had like a year to use the stuff. So we're like, well, we're going to go to the middle of nowhere and chill out in a log cabin with like nobody around. But just getting there, we had to fly. You have to wear your masks in the plane the entire time. If it slips down into your nose, like, oh, sir, you're going to have it over your nose. Like, oh, sorry. Yeah, no fun. So I wouldn't want to have to fly to Singapore. It's sad, but hopefully this will all be behind us sooner or later, because I miss all these in-person conferences and workshops, all these people I get to see once or twice a year, and I just get to talk to my computer nowadays. That's all I get to do.
Yeah, my brother's having a kid soon, and my parents want to visit to see the baby, but of course they have to wait. And if they do come from New Zealand over here, they may not be able to get back, or they may have to pay for quarantine when they get back.
Well, yeah, you have to quarantine in a lot of places for 14 days.
Yeah, and if you do it by choice, you got to pay for it yourself. So so they got to go back to New Zealand, spend 2 weeks in a hotel. But if I go visit them, I might do that, and I'll get some work done. So
yeah, 2 weeks in a hotel. I hear productivity calling.
Yeah, exactly. As long as the Wi-Fi is good, I got to check that out before I go. So I'm going to try and go in March. Fingers crossed. But anyways, so next on our list, we have find a job. So,
get a job, you deadbeat.
So we have like 50 plus jobs on getcfmljobs.com. We have one new one. So this is for a full-time ColdFusion developer in Morrisville, North Carolina. It was posted on August 8th.
Morrisville.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a quick check. Any ColdBox reference? See how many years experience. 5+ years of relevant software development experience. See, that's good. So that means if you have a really good, solid, PHP background, maybe they would count that.
They want Framework 1 or other OO frameworks.
Okay, well, ColdFusion can be other OO frameworks. All right, ColdBox, demonstrated proficiency. All right. Strong knowledge of stuff. Jira.
So it's a good, solid job app, and you can find out more about the company right here. I don't know what it is. So this is from the Indeed website. So that's one of the things I like about the Get CFML jobs. It pulls these jobs in from all the different sites like Indeed and Monster and everything, and shows you in one place.
It's kind of like Fusion Reactor Cloud. It pulls all the data into one place.
Okay, Brad, how much are they paying you?
Nothing, Gavin, nothing.
Not enough. Not enough. We also have another job I found on Twitter. And so this is through a website called Leading Response, and it's a ColdFusion or C#.NET developer. So they're looking for, somebody with a 2-year degree, a full-time position in Tampa. They have a travel percentage included as well. And so it looks like some interesting things in here. So ColdFusion and Microsoft.NET is what they're using with SQL Server.
They want you to develop in-tier web-based applications. What does in-tier really mean? Some number of tiers.
That word's not too simple.
Tiers for fears. That's T-I-E-R, by the way, not T-E-A-R.
Yep. Okay, so a couple good job opportunities there, and again, getcfmljobs.com has a lot of great jobs available listed there, so check that out. Next on our list, we have ForgeBox module of the week, and this week, it's actually a pretty simple little CommandBox module, but I wanted to show you guys because 2 reasons. I think it's pretty neat, although CommandBox does have some of this functionality built in.
I haven't even seen this. Published August 5th. So this just came out when I was on vacation, probably.
Yep. And so what it allows you to do is to
Look at
basically
that.
create some bookmarks. And so it's pretty simple. You can list your bookmarks by using bookmark list. You can add a bookmark, so you give it a name and then give it the path, and then it remembers it. And so if you want to later, you want to go to something, you just say go to, and the name of the folder, and jump there.
You're bookmarking directories, basically.
Yeah, so just easy way to jump around. And I know with CommandBox, if you have a server already, you can basically just CD into the server name, and it'll do
Server
that, right?
CD. Yeah, the server CD command will jump to the web root of a server. But if you haven't started a server in that directory, you can't use that. Because I use that all the time, but like literally just this morning before the podcast, I wanted to jump into a project that's just a collection of task runners that I have for a client, and I don't start a server in that directory, so I can't use server CD to get to it. So I've talked on the mailing list about some sort of generic bookmark functionality in CommandBox, but it was never quite a compelling enough, feature to build it. So I'm glad to see somebody's made it as a module. This is perfect.
Yeah, I like it. And the cool thing about it too is if you're thinking about a module or something, this is a very simple module. And he's got something like he's got the plus and the minus as well as add and delete. But if you want to add some trickiness, he just extends the add, so that automatically works. And the add function itself, it's just a simple CFC.
He actually has CFCs called plus sign.
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty interesting too.
I've never even tried that. I'm excited to hear that that works.
Yeah.
So it looks like he's just storing these in the module settings.
Yeah, so
perfect. That's exactly how I would have done it. Good job.
So, exactly. So I thought if you want to use the module, cool. If not, if you were thinking about making a module, this is a nice little one to, nothing too complicated. It's simple, but it's clean, and it works really well. And he's using some of the things like yellow text, bold line. He's using some of these functions you should be using. So I just thought if you guys are thinking about maybe I want to make a command, this would be kind of a nice one to do.
Yeah, this is a really nice, fully working but still very basic little module to look at. Yeah, I love that it's just using the config settings. So if you were to type config show in your CLI, you would see this is all just stored as just good old fashioned module settings, which is nice. That's a cool little module. I like it. I might actually try playing around with it because, like I said, I get a lot of mileage out of the server CD. But I have just tons of projects I jump around between, and I have a handful of places I like to, directories on my hard drive I change into that I don't have a server. And I'll admit sometimes I've started a dummy server in a folder just so I could use server CD to be able to CD into it, which is kind of lame. But this would allow me to just create an ad hoc bookmark without having to have a server. So.
Yeah. So Charlie asked an interesting question too. He says, can you use the bookmark names and other things where a folder will be used, like cfconfig pointing to the folder holding the config files for CF or Lucy? Now, with the current setup, I don't think you could, but there could be like a bookmark info where you could give it the name and it would give you the path back or something. You could add that as an extra command. So
you couldn't change the core command functionality, however, inside of CommandBox. However, what would be interesting is if CommandBox emitted some new interception point called resolving folder path that a module could listen to and have an opportunity to do its own custom expansions on the path prior to the default logic inside of CommandBox firing. Because that would actually allow you to modify, which could be dangerous, mind you, but it could potentially allow you to modify the underlying functionality of how CommandBox, expands a relative path to an absolute path. That's an interesting idea.
I was thinking about just echoing it out using the syntax we use elsewhere. When you get the version to output into a box script, that's what I was thinking. But
I mean, you could do that inside the parameter list. But if there was a command that internally just ran the CD, command or something like that you couldn't directly touch, wouldn't let you do it. The biggest concern I would have, because it would take just a matter of seconds to implement that. The biggest concern I would have would be the potential performance overhead. If you had some process that's resolving hundreds or thousands of paths, and if every single one of those now announces an interception point, which something might be listening to and running custom logic. But I guess I'd have to test it. That's an interesting idea, though, Charlie. To be able to, because CommandBox has kind of built-in expansions, such as the tilde, expands to your user home directory, that's actually CommandBox doing that. Because Windows has no concept of tilde having any meaning on the file system. But in CommandBox, if you do cd tilde, it drops you in your user home, even on Windows, because CommandBox has special logic that says, hey, if it starts with a tilde, that means, turn it into this. So that would be an interesting idea to be able to modify the internals of CommandBox to have your own custom contributed. And that's the power of interceptors, folks. Won't find those in Framework 1.
Well,
interceptors, baby.
Scott said if it takes seconds, you should do it now. So I'll read the Patreon list.
Did it. It's done.
I'll read the Patreon list, and you can finish that while we finish the show. But before that...
it would actually be easy. I would just go to the result path method in the file system util, and I would announce an interception point. I would pass the relative path in, and then I would accept back the intercept data, and if the interceptor had changed it, I would use it. It's really like 3 lines of code.
Okay, well, you can do that here in a minute. But first, let's talk about our VS Code, hints, tips, and tricks of the week. So this one here is actually something that I ran over on Twitter. Sorry, I ran it over. But it was pretty interesting. So one of the cool things about VS Code is the search abilities. But this one is called Search Editor Apply Changes. And so what it allows you to do is to actually search for something. And so it's got a cool little animated GIF. But when you search for something, you can actually see all the different places that is found in your files and basically edit them all in place and save them all at the same time.
So it gives you like multi-cursor edit, but from the search results.
Yeah. So you can basically find them in all these places and just change them. Instead of doing a find replace, you do multi-cursor. And you actually will save it in the workspace.
Curious how that works if you have like 1,000 results as opposed to 4 like the example shows.
It's a good question. But nice little ones. You run a search, then you edit them, and then you basically run the command apply search editor changes to workspace, and it'll go and do that. It does give you a warning, though, that the workspace has to be in sync with the search editor before making those changes. So I guess if you haven't saved something, it might override the change in the meantime. But yeah, it's basically just a nice little new one. And you can do some key bindings too, so you could basically pull it up nice and simple. But yeah, again, it's one of those little teeny tiny modules that could be pretty useful and pretty handy. So
I like it.
Yep, very cool. So next up, we have our Patreon supporters. So we have about 29 of them, I think, now to thank for supporting us financially through Patreon. And your support obviously supports these podcasts, but also things like CommandBox, ForgeBox, ColdBox, and TestBox, and all the other boxes out there.
Box.
Yeah, there's lots of boxy box. You can find out more information about it through patreon.com/ordersolutions. And as I mentioned, I will read the names so you can make that change, Brad. So thank you very much to Ben Adele, Brett DeLine, Calvin Staton, Charlie Arehart, Da Lee, Dan Card, Daniel Garcia, David Bellinger, Tadia Lesnicki, Don Bellamy, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Giancarlo Gomez, Jan Yannick, Jason Dager, Jeff McCain, Jeremy Adams, Jordan Clark, Joseph Lamery, Kai Koenig, Lex Maturahati, Mario Rodriguez, Matthew Clemente, Mingo Hagen, Scott Steinbeck, Sean Odin, Stephen Klotz, Simnatrix, and Yogesh Methur. So thank you everybody who supports us, and you can find out more about them on ordersolutions.com/about-us/sponsors. And it's great to see so many of you in the chat room talking away, giving us trouble. But one of the benefits of watching live, you guys can heckle us from the chat room. So, are you finished, Brad? Did you commit that code? Is it ready to download?
No, I'm messaging someone on Slack.
Slacker.
I'll think about it. I'll do some testing. Like I said, you have to be careful with interception points. You start announcing like thousands of them. Those 3 milliseconds a piece all of a sudden can add up before you know it. But
well, I guess you'll have to use Fusion Reactor to double check. Make sure it's safe.
I do. Fusion Reactor can be used from the command line in the actual CommandBox CLI. There's a page on the blog, on the docs, and there's even a screencast about it. So
okay, so next week, Brad, wear your Fusion Reactor shirt so we know who you work for.
I don't think I have any Fusion Reactor shirts.
Well, they better fix that.
They never give away shirts. They always give away. I probably have one right there somewhere. Little Fusion Reactor coffee mugs.
Yep. The monitoring, stay calm, keep monitoring, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You got some good swag, but yeah, you need a T-shirt or something, huh?
Well, I'll talk to David Tattersall about that. I'm like, come on, man, where's my T-shirt?
Yep, exactly. Well, thank you everybody so much. It's been a good episode, a good week, and hopefully we'll see you all next week for a lot more. Oh, don't forget,
Adios.
Adobe CF Summit speaker registration this week, Brad, and everybody else.
I know. Remind me again later on.
Yep. And then 2 more sessions for the CF Meetup this week as well. So have a good one, everybody. Catch you later.
All right. Bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernize.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.